Today on the Construction Corner podcast, we're going to talk about the hidden cost of burnout within your firm. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Construction Corner podcast. I'm Dylan, I'm your host, and today, guys, we're going to be talking about burnout. Now, this is probably one of the biggest topics that I end up talking about to friends, to coworkers, to people across the industry. Right now, it is so hard to find people who are qualified, who want to work, who show up on time. And even just this past week, I went to a pre-apprenticeship program, kind of graduation or midway, like luncheon for all the like donors, people in the community to come in and see what this program is all about. So this pre-apprenticeship program was all about really like one of the main criteria for this program. It's a group of 15 people, but they all had to show up on time. Like if they didn't show up on time, they were kicked out of the program. Like they did not graduate, and people really understood this. And so they did. And just that simple act of like showing up to class on time for this pre-apprenticeship program was a huge deal, right? But it set them up for success in like going into the workforce that, hey, if you do not show up on time to this, free program, then you're not going to be able to get a job because they're not going to want to hire you because you don't show up to work, right? They can't count on you. So just the simple thing of people showing up, doing what they're supposed to is honestly sometimes hard to come by. But these programs that we have in our community and that people are able to get into and earn a valuable skill, right? So for this one, it was mostly in like carpentry, right? Putting concrete forms together, building some simple stuff, right? They do a community project at the kind of end of it, right? Whether it's building a shed or working on some houses or pouring some concrete, right? They're doing some type of community effort at the end of this 7-week program. And then usually out of the 15, I think most everybody gets a job placed, at the end of it, which is pretty cool. It's all done here locally in our community. And you start to see more and more of these getting placed. It doesn't get the advertising or the traction that maybe it should. But this is something that is hugely important to the entire community. And again, puts people to work here in our local community. Really, really cool. But at the end of the day, like this burnout, right? Folks working nights, weekends, burning the candle at both ends really creates a burnout situation. And most people don't know how to recover from it, right? When you're stuck in these big loops of not being able to go home or feeling bad if you go home early or leave early on a Friday or whatever, right? It creates this whole burnout cycle that you don't get reprieves from, even though you've put in your 40 and, worked all the hours and still not balancing out for the individual. And so what we have is really like my story where I ended up for months on end working nights, weekends to get this large operating room renovation project out the door because I didn't have any help. Everybody else was on their own projects across the entire firm. The help I did get, I had to redo pretty much all the work because it was a, intern that wasn't qualified to be working on like a project with as tight of deadlines as I had, right? Because they need help. You got to train them. And it's not that kid's fault per se. It's that, that was the only person. And then I end up having to redo it anyway because they didn't do it correctly. So I ended up getting shingles like 3 days before getting on a plane to go on vacation. It was on my chest, this left hemisphere of my body, right? So over my, heart and back. Couldn't sleep for like the entire 10 days that I had it. Was on antivirals and, ibuprofen and Tylenol for the entire time, which also means you can't really drink all that stuff, right? So no pina coladas on the beach, no Mai Tais, no nothing. Because, again, you're on these drugs that would make it worse. I'd still like to have a liver and kidney at some point. And all of these like real costs to working, that hard for that long without any real reward, right? No one said good job. There's no pats on the back, right? You just did what you were supposed to do. And to a point, that's all well and good, but there's no recognition or like no financial incentive of, hey, like I made this project come in way under budget, right? Like I made the firm a bunch of money. I didn't get compensated anymore for doing that. And this is ultimately very reflective of the entire industry. People are killing themselves for the project. They're doing above and beyond work and not getting compensated any more for it than like the person who's slacking off and not doing jack for the firm for the projects, and everybody's having to pick up after them and they're still getting paid really well when you're killing yourself over here and not getting any extra compensation, right? So these real costs end up, you lose your top talent, you keep the B and C players on your team. And where does this ultimately lead your firm? For the most part, it ends up being the owners that are having to really pick up all the pieces, right? Because they're left with the entirety of it, or it puts hurt on the rest of your team and you're just keeping terrible people. You're having to eat more, mistakes and change orders in the construction process, which is not good for you, right? And having to do that, the owners aren't happy, your clients aren't staying with you, and it just becomes a real grind without really any payoff. And so what we end up having is a situation where people kind of just leave, right? And so what is the solution to this whole burnout problem? So I've thought about this a ton. One, it's you really have to recruit, hire, train, develop top talent. You've got to pour into your people. You've got to give them the resources to just excel at their job. But this also means giving them the resources to succeed, right? Engineers that graduated from a 4-year university, top engineering school, do really well, are your best performers. They don't want to be stuck just like drafting all day long, right? Doing these tedious and time-consuming tasks. They want to be like solving real problems, doing load calc, sizing stuff, reviewing drawings. They don't want to be stuck in like drafting purgatory because it is not meaningful or beneficial to them, right? They want to be solving problems, running calculations, doing all of that rather than like putting reports together or just drafting this stuff. So automation is pretty much the only way out of the drafting purgatory that everybody gets put into. But it also allows you to upskill the people on your team faster, right? Your young engineers that you bring into the firm, like they use automation, which means that all that time that they would have spent drafting, you can now teach them more valuable skills, right? You can do code classes, code updates, making sure they have right details. They can do load analysis. They become more valuable to the firm faster because all that time they would spend drafting is now taken over by automation. So you can pay your people more, you can upskill them faster. They're going to be better advocates and consultants to your clients, which is ultimately what you're getting paid for. So all of these things can be done better, faster, all for your clients, right? You're going to get paid more because you can deliver faster. All of this is really what it comes down to. You can then recruit, hire, retain better talent because, again, you're using better tools, which allows you to keep better talent. But tools also act as a huge recruiting tool, right? The more technology that you're using and implementing in your firm, the happier people are. But it's also a cool marketing play to show that you're using the best tools in the game. So you've got technology. You've then got happier people, which means that people are wanting to work with you, right? Your clients stay with you because they like working with you and your team because you're happier. You can solve their problems better and give them better results, right? So at the end of the day, all this comes down to being better for your clients, right? Your people are happier. You're making more money. Clients are happier. You're not missing deadlines. You're making fewer mistakes. You're not losing out on profit, or your margins are not razor thin anymore, right? You can do more for your team. You can invest in better tools, equipment, better computers, better IT, better internet, right? Like better perks, all of this from the simple thing of investing in automation, right? That's what this ultimately comes down to, is that's the only thing that ends up being scalable. Because for the most part, you don't have a robust training materials, right, to put people through a pipeline. And the analogy I like to use for like a training pipeline is basically special forces, right? So if you look at the military and their pipeline, it's also, 250 years old. So they've, figured a thing out or two over the years. Is you have, like, let's just take the Army. You have this very large force of people, hundreds of thousands, right? Millions of people in the whole military complex. They go in, then they go through boot camp. You have selection, and then you have basically the pyramid or selection for that. So you have, everybody that goes in. Not everybody makes it to general, right? You got a lot of privates, only a few generals. And so you have that attrition ladder, but you also have like the special forces ladder, right? You have everybody who comes in as an enlisted and then goes over to special forces, but not everybody makes it through that pipeline, right? There's a big filter process from the start to the end, but a lot of people have that opportunity to go through those pipelines. And so the more pipelines that you have into your firm, right? Where are you recruiting from? Where are you training? Like, how are you training once they get into your firm, right? So how many people do you have come in? What process do you have to get them up to speed? Then what process do you have to promote, elevate them through your organization? If you look at the military, again, think whatever you want about it, but as far as like a recruiting, hiring, training, advancement machine, like it's done pretty good, right? You have all the ranks of enlisteds to officers, and then all the skills within that, everything that serves everybody, right? From cooks to technicians to snipers to gunners to explosive guys to captains of ships, nuclear engineers, ordnance specialists, medics, right? And every rank of medic in there. Like you got all of these levels, skills, schools, training for everybody. And if you treat your business in the same way, right, except you're very specialized, which pretty much everyone can relate to kind of special forces in this way, is like you have one job, one task, one mission, and that is whatever you do as a company, right? So as an engineering firm, it's usually building a commercial building or designing a commercial building. So like you have one pipeline and you might specialize in a specific type of project, right? Maybe it's healthcare or industrial or manufacturing, warehouses, right? Whatever you specialize in. Now you have you're even more specialized, right? Instead of all MEP stuff, you're only doing hospital stuff, which then means you have an even more specific training pipeline and an easier path for everybody to move forward, right? You don't have to memorize all the airflows or all the engineering specialties or electrical stuff of like, how many hours of diesel fuel in other facilities, right? You only know hospitals and healthcare. You don't have to worry about schools, right? Those are two very different processes. And then in different states, the processes are even different for how you go through schools in California versus schools in Ohio. And the same goes for hospitals, right? Every state has their own OSHPD certification and how you go through the whole healthcare review process. So as we go through all of these, when you implement training and you have a recruitment strategy and recruitment pipelines to training your people, which makes them easier to retain. And then you have a promotion ladder and, hey, you reach these certain milestones. This is your promotion. This is your pay grade, just like the military, right? Everybody knows everybody else's pay grade. You know about what you're making within a pay range. It's standard. It's published. Like this is what it is. And so these statuses become pretty simple then to operate by, right? You update your pay grades every year, whether somebody gets promoted or not. Like this all becomes a pretty simple roadmap that you can use. But this all starts back with automation, because if you don't have the time to like look up and out of projects and you're just stuck in the trenches doing all those tedious, time-consuming tasks all day long, like you're never going to have time to build a training program, to have a recruiting pipeline, to build all of these other processes and systems that you need to excel as an organization. So the only way to do this is to gain more time, right? And because if you're a small firm, you gain more time by automation, which gives you more margins, which means that you can hire like a recruiting person. You can hire someone to run a training program. You can put yourself in a bigger office to then bring in more people, right? You can hire more interns. You can hire 2 and 3 at a time and see which one works out, right? And grow through training development, giving people chances, and then they wash themselves out, right? And your culture kind of maintains the status quo of the firm. So at the end of the day, all this comes down to using automation to increase your margins, get you back your time, and improve how you grow your organization. Without any of this, you're going to be kind of in the same place you are now as you will be in 5 years, right? You're going to be stagnant. You're going to wonder why you're not growing, why you're not developing, why people aren't staying with you. And that's all because you don't give them opportunities, because you can't, because they're heads down in the work that they're doing. So start using automation, start using these tools. You can start for free at cowabungstudios.com with our stuff, because if you don't, you're just going to wonder why you're in the same place in 5 years. You're going to maybe have the same people around you, or worse, because again, if they're not advancing, if you're not growing, you're dying. And this is why automation is your only path forward, so that your people don't burn out, they don't get tired, and they're able to grow and have a passion for what you do, helping people design commercial buildings. And that, guys, is this episode of the Construction Corner podcast. Until next time.